The gun smoke clung to the trees like a veil, thick, choking, and alive with the echoes of musket fire. In the forests of Missouri, where guerrilla fighters hid and hunted men, swore they saw something that night. Something too immense, too unnatural to belong in this world. A massive, pale form emerged from the mist. Its outline was blurred, yet its presence was undeniable. Eyes glimmered like embers caught in the firelight, watching unshaken while every man's trigger finger tightened in fear. The first volley cracked through the silence. Rifles roared, sparks split the night, and bullets vanished into the creature's body. But it did not falter. No flinch, no cry, no blood on the ground. The beast moved forward, steady and deliberate, as if untouched by steel and powder. Panic spread like wildfire. Men reloaded frantically, some cursing, others whispering prayers. Still the apparition advanced. Another barrage lit up the shadows, each shot echoing off the trees. Muzzle flashes carved brief images into the night: wide shoulders, a massive chest, a head crowned with fur as white as frost. The men claimed it was a bear, but larger than any beast they had ever hunted, taller than a man on horseback. Its pale coat glowed against the smoke, as though the forest itself had conjured an avenging spirit. And then silence. The creature stopped at the edge of their circle. Its shape hung there, suspended in the haze, before slowly dissolving into nothing. When dawn came, the battlefield told no story. Only shattered branches, empty casings, and the acrid scent of spent powder remained. No carcass. No tracks pressed into the mud. Nothing. In a faded military report, unsigned and buried deep in the archives, the words appear: a singular apparition, fate unknown, a mysterious occurrence beyond explanation. For the men who survived that night, it was never forgotten. They would speak of it in whispers, as though the white bear might return if its name was spoken too loud. Thus began the legend of the Ghost Bear of Missouri. The Civil War tore across Missouri, not like a clean line of battle, but like a spreading fire. It did not confine itself to open fields or famous names. It crept into farms, towns, and the endless forests of the Ozarks. Missouri was a borderland, and borderlands are unstable. Unionist and Confederate sympathies tangled here, like roots under the soil, impossible to separate without blood. Families were divided. Brothers took different flags, and whole communities lived under the shadow of suspicion. To the soldiers in regular ranks, Missouri was a nightmare of uncertainty. The enemy did not always wear gray or blue. Guerrilla fighters melted into the woods, struck with sudden ferocity, and disappeared before an organized column could answer. A patrol could march all day through pine and oak, never catching sight of a rebel, only to be shot at from the ridges when night fell. Roads that seemed safe by sunlight turned into death traps by moonlight. The terrain itself conspired in this war. The Ozarks were thick with timber and underbrush, a labyrinth of hollows, caves, and riverbeds. Paths vanished into ravines, trails twisted until even locals could lose themselves. Soldiers recorded that the land swallowed sound. A musket crack could echo strangely, bouncing from ridge to ridge, leaving men unsure if danger lay ahead or behind. In such a place, the line between the natural and the supernatural felt thin. For the guerrilla bands, the forest was their ally. They knew where the streams bent, where the limestone cliffs gave cover, and where an enemy column might stumble in the dark. By day, they rode swift horses down forgotten trails. By night, they gathered around small fires, telling stories as old as the hills. It was in these nights, when the flames flickered low, and the forest seemed alive with unseen eyes, that men spoke of things beyond rifles and sabers. The soldiers who survived Missouri's Shadow War wrote diaries filled with bitterness, exhaustion, and fear. In among the complaints of poor rations and sleepless nights, one finds scattered phrases: a strange beast seen in the timber, a pale animal crossing the ridge at dusk, too large to be a bear, too silent to be real. These fragments rarely stretched into more than a line, but they suggest an unease deeper than hunger or fatigue. Civilians, too, whispered of things they could not name. Farmers reported cattle mauled but never eaten. Shepherds spoke of sheep scattered and missing with no wolf tracks to be found. Children told their parents they had seen a white shadow move through the trees at dusk. And always when dawn came, there was nothing. No tracks, no blood, only silence. Such rumors grew quickly in wartime, where every unexplained sound carried weight. Union officers sometimes dismissed these accounts as hysteria. Yet the reports kept coming. A letter from a soldier in 1863 mentions a beast impervious to musket fire. Another described how guerrillas refused to ride a certain trail after sundown, claiming the white one walks there. In a war already thick with death, the idea of something beyond bullets, something that ignored the laws of flesh, was a terror more profound than any ambush. Missouri in those years was not merely a battlefield. It was a crucible of folklore. The violence of man and the mystery of the land braided together until no one could say where fact ended and superstition began. Against this backdrop, the story of the ghost bear found fertile soil. It was whispered in campfires, muttered in letters, noted in fragments of official reports. And always it was remembered not as a tale of a simple animal, but as something larger, something that moved between worlds, leaving only questions behind. For the men who lived through it, the ghost bear was more than a story. It became a symbol of Missouri itself, wild, unpredictable, and impervious to the iron will of armies. And as the war raged on the line between memory and myth, blurred even further, what remained was not just a record of battles fought and lost, but a legend carved into the silence of the Ozark woods. In the wartime papers of Missouri, amid casualty lists and dispatches, small notices appear that speak of something stranger than bullets. The official tone of military records rarely bent toward the mysterious, yet every so often a phrase slips through that carries the weight of unease. A faded memorandum from a Union outpost in 1862 reads, "Men report a beast white in appearance of unusual magnitude. Volleys discharged yielded no effect. No remains discovered." The words are clinical, stripped of emotion, but their very brevity suggests an officer unwilling to expand on what troubled him. In July of 1863, the Liberty Tribune printed a short column beneath reports of troop movements. It described a remarkable animal seen near Clay County. The notice read, "Travelers returning from the western road state, they beheld a large, pale-colored beast of immense proportion. Said animal is reported to vanish when approached. Pursuits availed nothing. No tracks found upon the earth." That such language vanish when approached was set into a public newspaper, hints that more than one source whispered of it. Among Confederate notes recovered from fallen guerrillas, stranger details appear. One ragged diary from 1863, later found near Cass County, contains this fragment. "Last eve the white moved among the trees. It was vast as a barn eyes like lamps. Pistols fired, muskets cracked, yet the men swore it laughed. At dawn we searched, but the ground bore no mark of beast nor blood. The handwriting trembles, the ink blotched, as though written by a hand still shaking from memory." Union soldiers, too, recorded such things in letters home. A private in the 6th Missouri Infantry wrote to his sister, "The strangest tale grips the camp. A creature like a bear, though larger, haunts the timber. Shots do naught. Some fellows say it is a phantom, others that it is the devil himself come to Missouri. I tell you this not to frighten, but to set down the truth of what men swear to have seen." Letters such as these were rarely meant for public record, yet they survive folded into family collections. Official dispatches tried to explain the fear away. An officer's report from 1864 dismissed the matter as wild exaggeration born of fatigue. Yet in the very next line he noted, "Nonetheless, the men refused the trail by night, declaring it haunted by the white beast. Even in denial, the legend pressed into the paper. Civilian testimony wove its own threads into the record. Farmers in Boone and Howard counties wrote to local papers about livestock mauled, yet uneaten fences broken in the night, dogs howling without cause. One farmer's letter stated, "I beheld a shape white as frost upon the ridge. My horse refused to advance. By morning there was naught but silence." The editors printed these notes as curiosities, but the language matched that of soldiers already in the field. The St. Louis, Missouri Democrat, in January 1865, carried a peculiar line. A singular alarm prevailed among certain troops this week, attributed to a phantom or animal in the forest. The creature is described as both bear and ghost, impervious to musketry. Its fate unknown. That closing "its fate unknown" reads almost like a concession, a shrug before the unexplainable. County histories compiled years later still mention the tale. In Boone County's 1876 record appears a passage. "In those turbulent days, much was spoken of the white bear, which no ball could wound. Old soldiers gave oath to its truth, yet no hide was ever produced. The tone shifts from immediacy to memory, but the refrain 'no ball could wound' remains consistent. Some accounts bear the hallmarks of embellishment. One diary claims the beast walked upright like a man, another, that its roar could shake the earth. But within the more sober entries, short, reluctant, almost embarrassed, the pattern emerges. Always pale, always immense, always impervious to shot, always vanishing without sign. What makes these fragments compelling is not their detail, but their repetition. No one account stands as proof. Yet together, scattered across time and county lines, they form a lattice of testimony. Guerrillas, Union scouts, civilians, men and women who shared little else describe the same apparition. To modern eyes, it is easy to dismiss. Exhaustion fear the tricks of smoke and shadow in wooded terrain. Yet the documents resist erasure. The handwriting of men long dead still whispers singular apparition, mysterious occurrence, fate unknown. Words chosen carefully, words that outlived their authors. Thus, the fact layer rests not upon a single proclamation, but upon brittle papers and yellowed ink. Letters folded in trunks, diaries, torn and smudged newspapers that carried death tolls, and in between, the murmur of something that walked beyond comprehension. These fragments may never yield certainty, but they remind us that history, even in its most documented form, sometimes contains shadows. And Missouri's ghost bear is one such shadow caught between the official line of war and the private confession of men who swore they saw what should not exist. Around the campfires of Missouri, where men nursed their wounds and kept one eye always on the tree line, the tale of the white bear was retold in voices hushed, never raised. Facts became blurred details, shifted with each retelling, and before long what had been a scattered set of reports transformed into something much larger, a living legend. They said the beast appeared without sound. No paw crushed leaves, no branch snapped beneath its weight. It moved as though it belonged to the mist itself, gliding, rather than walking, its pale body catching stray firelight in ways that made men's throats dry. Some swore they could see through its flanks, as if it were made not of flesh, but of smoke, its edges dissolving into the night. One version told of a patrol deep in the Ozark woods. The men followed tracks broad-wide as a man's chest down into a ravine. But halfway through, the prints simply ended as though the creature had stepped off into the air. Nothing lay beyond, no disturbed earth, no claw marks, no trail, just silence. Men abandoned the pursuit, muttering of spirits and devils. Guerrilla fighters, men hardened by ambushes and killings, gave the tale darker roots. They believed the white bear was not an animal at all, but a manifestation of vengeance. A patchwork spirit stitched from the restless dead, buried without rites in shallow graves, its form shaped by the forest's grief. To them, its imperviousness to bullets was proof of its otherworldly nature. Lead could not harm what did not belong to the living. Others whispered older explanations. Settlers told of native stories that spoke of a guardian of the timber, a spirit beast that appeared whenever the land was wounded. War had torn Missouri apart, burned its farms, stripped its forests, and poisoned its rivers. Perhaps the white bear was the land itself risen in protest. Its sudden appearances and vanishing fits the pattern of a warning more than an attack. In small cabins and farmhouses, families passed the legend to their children. Mothers warned them not to stray from the hearth at dusk, lest the white one take you into the trees. Shepherds explained scattered flocks by blaming the beast. Farmers cursed broken fences and missing livestock, even if coyotes or men had been the true culprits. The white bear became a scapegoat for all manner of unexplained ills. Superstitions sprouted as quickly as weeds. Soldiers carved crosses into their rifle stocks, believing it might turn bullets into blessed shot. Others slipped silver coins into their pockets, claiming only silver could wound a thing not of flesh. Men refused to march on certain trails, insisting they were haunted by the white one's tread. Even the bravest guerrilla captains thought twice before sending riders out under a full moon. Camp songs and prayers absorbed the story too. A traveling preacher recounted hearing men sing improvised verses set to the rhythm of old hymns. "Deliver us from the white one, whose eyes burn in the wood." To soldiers weary of endless ambushes, the beast was not merely a phantom. It was the embodiment of fate itself, a sign that their days might be numbered. Not all saw it as a curse. A few accounts describe the creature as a strange protector. One tale claims the white bear walked between two patrols about to clash, its appearance so terrifying that both sides fled instead of fighting. Another says a company fired blindly into the trees, and the creature's arrival scattered them before they could kill each other. In this telling, the beast was not malevolent, but a grim guardian saving lives in its own fearsome way. Still, the darker version prevailed. Soldiers linked the beast's appearances with death. They whispered that any company who glimpsed its pale figure would soon be destroyed in ambush. Men who survived certain massacres claimed to have seen its glowing eyes in the trees the night before. Whether omen or agent, the white bear was bound to violence in the minds of those who carried the tale. The names multiplied. In Boone County, it was called the Frost Beast. In Clay County, the White Devil. Some guerrillas refused to call it anything at all, saying only, as if naming the creature would summon it. Each name revealed a community's fear, yet each kept the core the same: pale, immense, impervious, gone without a trace. By the war's final years, the folklore of the white bear had become inseparable from daily life. It crept into lullabies, sermons, campfire tales. It lived on soldiers' lips as they kept watch, and in the mutterings of old women spinning yarn by candlelight. Even when no one claimed to see it, its absence was felt a silence, heavy with possibility. And so, as the war faded into weary memory, the ghost bear remained. Not only in brittle diaries and ink-smudged reports, but in story and superstition, whispered from mouth to mouth. It became both a warning and a mystery, a reminder that war does not only scar men's bodies, but also reshapes the unseen world around them. The fact layer had left its fragments terse notes, half-believed reports, newspaper columns. The folklore layer breathed life into them, turning scattered lines into a legend that endured. Missouri had not only been a battlefield, it had been a place where the living brushed against something vast, white and unyielding, and where every crack in the forest seemed to echo with its name. The ghost bear was not the first such tale, nor would it be the last. Missouri's legend was rooted in its own soil, but when examined alongside other wars, a pattern emerges, a chorus of strange presences that walk with men into battle. During the same American Civil War in the rolling fields of Virginia, rumors spread of phantom riders. Entire companies claimed to see mounted figures cresting the ridgelines at twilight, cavalrymen in gray, who never drew nearer, who vanished when approached. Newspapers dismissed them as illusions caused by smoke or mist. Yet diaries repeat the same lines again and again: volleys fired, no bodies found. The words echo Missouri absence, imperviousness, disappearance. A decade earlier, in the Crimea, British soldiers recorded their own encounter with something unearthly. Among the misery of the trenches, men wrote of a black dog that prowled between the lines. Its size was monstrous, its eyes glowed red in the night, and bullets passed harmlessly through its form. Men came to believe the dog heralded death. If you saw it, you would not live to see another dawn. The ghost bear's white figure and the Crimea's black dog were opposites in color, but not in essence, both impervious, both bound to war. The motif deepened in the First World War. Letters home from the Western Front described the Angels of Mons, luminous figures who appeared to British troops during desperate fighting in 1914. Some said the shapes deflected bullets, others that they brought calm in the chaos. Official histories denied them, but too many letters repeated the vision to ignore. And once more, soldiers described beings that could not be harmed by shot or shell lingering at the threshold between salvation and doom. In France, during that same war, stories circulated of a headless horseman seen galloping across no man's land at night. German soldiers told of him as well. Rifle fire brought nothing down. The rider would charge through the smoke, vanish at the wire, and leave silence behind. The imagery is folkloric, but the language no effect. No remains. Fate unknown belongs to the same vocabulary Missouri's men had used. Closer to home, native traditions carried echoes of such presences long before gunpowder touched the Missouri hills. The Lakota spoke of the white buffalo, a sacred, untouchable sign of renewal and upheaval. The Cherokee remembered Uktena, a serpent guardian that could not be slain by ordinary means. Among the Osage hunters spoke of spirit bears that appeared when balance in the land was broken. These older traditions show that the ghost bear's story did not emerge from nothing. It aligned itself with deeper rhythms already embedded in the soil. During the Second World War, soldiers added their own verses to this unending refrain. In the ruins of Stalingrad, Soviet troops spoke of the woman in white seen drifting among bombed-out buildings untouched by fire or bullets. German diaries mention her too, described not as a person, but as a specter. Again, the motif returns: an apparition immune to the weapons of men, appearing where death already overflowed. In the jungles of Vietnam, American soldiers told of rock apes, hulking figures larger than men, seen at night moving through the trees with uncanny silence. Soldiers fired whole magazines into the jungle, yet nothing fell. The enemy was real enough, but these encounters stood apart. Men argued afterward whether they had seen ape spirits or hallucinations born of exhaustion. But the refrain was always the same: bullets had no effect. In Afghanistan, modern patrols whispered of shadow men who kept pace along the mountain ridges. Seen through night vision scopes, these shapes absorbed fire without falling. Sometimes they disappeared mid-step. Commanders dismissed them as tricks of terrain, illusions of heat and light. But the stories multiplied. In barracks, men spoke of them as calmly as they spoke of IEDs. Both were threats. Both were real in their own way. The ghost bear of Missouri thus joins a lineage. The phantom riders of Virginia, the black dog of Crimea, the angels of Mons. The rock apes of Vietnam, the shadows of Afghanistan all belong to a shared pattern. They are born in war, in places where men stand closest to death, where fear reshapes reality. Always immense, always impervious, always vanishing into silence. Folklorists see in these stories the marks of archetype. Some are omens arriving before slaughter. Others are guardians saving lives by striking fear. Still others are punishments born of violence itself. Their shapes vary: bear, dog, angel, rider, shadow. But their role remains to remind men that not everything on the battlefield can be understood or controlled. The bridge between Missouri's forests and the world's battlefields is built not of evidence, but of motif. Singular disappearance, fate unknown, mysterious occurrence. Words recur like a haunting melody spoken by soldiers across languages and centuries. Each time the apparition slips beyond the reach of proof, but never beyond memory. Historians have often tried to explain these tales away. Hallucinations, born of fatigue animals, misidentified smoke and mist playing tricks on the eye. And perhaps they are. But if they were mere illusions, why do they follow the same form across so many wars? Why does the motif repeat unchanged wherever men kill each other in great numbers? The ghost bear of Missouri may be no more tangible than the angels of Mons or the rock apes of Vietnam. Yet together they form a tapestry, a dark folklore of war. A folklore that insists there are presences that walk alongside soldiers not bound by bullets or bayonets, appearing only where death is thickest. And so Missouri's legend becomes part of something larger. The pale bear is not only a beast of the Ozarks, but one verse in a global ballad of battlefield phantoms. It reminds us that in war, men do not only fight the enemy before them. They wrestle with the unseen, with the things their weapons cannot wound, with shadows that belong as much to myth as to memory. The ghost bear, the black dog, the angels, the shadows, all are names for the same question whispered across centuries. What walks with us into war, beyond our understanding, beyond our reach? The deeper one digs into Missouri's wartime record, the more the ghost bear refuses to remain a mere rumor. At first, it is a whisper, a soldier's diary line. Then it becomes a column buried in newsprint. But as the fragments accumulate, they form a strange weight, a mystery too consistent, too resistant to dismiss outright. One of the most unnerving aspects is the way official documents seem to break off. A Union officer's diary, neat and steady, until one October night in 1863 suddenly halts mid-sentence. The creature appeared once more, impervious to our volleys. Its eyes. The page ends there, torn ragged at the edge. No continuation survives. Did the officer himself rip it out, fearing mockery? Or did someone else remove it, unwilling to let those words remain? Other reports vanish in subtler ways. A quarterly log from a Union detachment references a pale beast that caused alarm among the men. In the following month's log, the section that might have contained further detail is blackened out with ink, the lines deliberately obscured. It is the only blot in an otherwise legible record. The absence draws the eye more than words ever could. Accounts from the guerrilla fighters, usually brash and unflinching, carry their own unease. One scout wrote that during an ambush before the first volley could be fired, the white bear emerged between their line and the Union troops. Both sides panicked. Shots erupted, but all were aimed at the beast. Our bullets whistled through theirs too, the scout recorded. We ceased fire as one for what used to waste powder on the devil. He claims the creature dissolved in the smoke. That day ended without a single casualty. A battle interrupted not by mercy, but by something outside both armies' control. But the story did not end there. Days later, the same guerrilla band was annihilated in a skirmish elsewhere. Of the few survivors, one swore the bear had marked them for death. His words passed along to a sympathetic farmer were later written in the margin of a county chronicle. The men said it had chosen them, and so it was. From the Union side came testimony just as strange. A captured Confederate, weary and half-starved, told his interrogators without prompting, "I have seen the white bear. It comes before death. No ball can touch it. Men who see it do not live long." The interrogating officer dutifully recorded the words, but later struck them out with heavy ink strokes. To censor a prisoner's delirium seems unnecessary unless those words echoed too closely what other men had already said. Physical objects, too, seemed touched by the legend. One Missouri family preserved a musket said to have belonged to their ancestor. Along the stock are carved tiny crosses etched with a knife and a single phrase, "wounds not." Oral tradition claims the man inscribed it after emptying his rifle into the white bear at point-blank range, only to see the creature advance unharmed. The musket, they say, was never fired again. Another artifact surfaces in Boone County, a powder horn, with the image of a hulking beast scratched crudely into its side. Beneath it are the initials of its owner, a guerrilla fighter killed in 1864. Was the drawing a warning, a boast, or a talisman against what he feared in the night? The powder horn remains mute testimony that the beast lived in more than just words. Camp rumors spread fast, fanned by fear. One Union patrol flatly refused to march through a ravine where the beast had been seen, despite direct orders. The officer in charge complained bitterly in his report. The men would sooner face court-martial than face the White One again. That report, unsigned, was filed away with no follow-up. It survives as a single sheet, a document that speaks less of cowardice than of the depth of dread the beast inspired. Conflicting descriptions multiply the unease. Some witnesses insisted the bear was solid, its muscles rippling beneath fur, its breath steaming in the night air. Others claimed it was translucent, more mist than flesh, its bulk visible only when firelight struck it. Yet both groups agreed on 2 points: it was vast, and it could not be harmed. The contradictions do not cancel each other. They thicken the mystery, as if each man had glimpsed only one aspect of something beyond human sense. One tale describes sparks leaping from the beast's hide when struck by bullets, as though the lead had struck stone. Another insists the beast's very presence silenced the world around it, drowning birdsong, crickets, even the rustle of leaves. To be near it was to step into a hush deeper than night. In late 1864, near Boone County, came the most detailed account. A detachment keeping night watch saw the beast rise from the tree line. Men fired until their barrels smoked red. "We loosed 100 shots," one man later said, "and not a hair was moved." Another swore that as the beast opened its jaws, no sound emerged, only a silence so profound it smothered the forest. By dawn, nothing remained but shredded bark and trampled grass. Within the week, that same detachment was ambushed, half its men cut down. Survivors insisted the bear had cursed them. Rumors spread that certain companies marked by the white bear never survived the war. One such unit, noted in a faded muster roll, has an ominous annotation: "None remaining by winter." No reason is given, no detail recorded. Only that stark line left for us to wonder. More chilling still are the patterns of suppression. The St. Louis, Missouri Democrat carried small mentions of a phantom beast, but always in a single line, always buried. A singular alarm, a mysterious occurrence, fate unknown. Never more than that. It is as if editors knew more but chose to print less, wary of stirring panic. The silence itself becomes part of the legend. Historians attempting to rationalize point to misidentified bears' exhaustion or hallucination. Perhaps. But then, why the same 4 refrains repeated across dozens of accounts? Pale, immense, impervious, vanishing. 4 traits like a signature scrawled across Missouri's war years. It is in these convergences that the climax gathers power. Torn diary pages, inked-out reports, carved muskets, contradictory testimonies, units refusing orders, censored newspaper lines. Together they form not proof, but pressure, a weight of evidence that insists something walked the forests of Missouri, something immune to bullet and bayonet. For those who faced it, the ghost bear was not a story. It was a presence. It stood among them in the gun smoke, indifferent to their volleys, as though reminding them that war itself had conjured a beast they could not kill. Even now, more than a century later, its echo remains. In every torn page, every smudged entry, every whispered memory, the white bear lingers, a climax. Without resolution, a mystery that refuses to die. The ghost bear of Missouri does not belong to myth alone. It belongs to that gray space where war blurs the natural and the supernatural, and where the dead leave behind more than bones. And as the climax settles, one truth rises like smoke: the ghost bear cannot be slain, not by shot, not by time, not even by forgetting. The war ended. Missouri's forests grew quiet again. Muskets' rusted graves sank into the soil, and the trails once soaked in blood became overgrown with pine and oak. Yet for those who had lived through it, silence did not mean peace. They carried with them stories they could not erase. Stories of volleys wasted of a beast that no bullet could touch, of pale eyes that watched from the timber. Years later, when the veterans gathered on courthouse lawns or in dim taverns, the white bear would surface again. Some laughed at it, brushing it aside as campfire nonsense. Others grew pale and swore it had been real as any soldier they'd ever faced. And always as they spoke, a hush would fall over the group, as though the memory itself held weight. In county histories, written long after the guns fell silent, the legend remained. Editors collected tales of raids and battles, but between them slipped short passages about a white beast which no ball could wound. The phrasing is cautious, reluctant, but it endures. It suggests the editors too had heard the whispers and could not quite bring themselves to leave them out. Folklore has a way of outlasting fact. Newspapers' yellow diaries crumble, but the voice of a story survives. Parents repeated it to their children not as history, but as warning. Stay close to home at dusk. Don't wander the timber when the moon is high. Beware the white one. By then it no longer mattered whether the beast had been flesh or phantom. What mattered was the fear it carried passed down like inheritance. Today hikers still walk those Missouri trails. Some speak of strange silences in the woods, of birds ceasing their song all at once. A few claim to have seen movement in the corner of their vision, a pale shadow slipping between trees. They laugh it off in daylight, but at night, when the forest is dark, the old tales return. Historians continue to argue. Skeptics dismiss the ghost bear as hallucination, as misidentified wildlife, as fear spun into fantasy. Believers point to the consistency, the repetition of traits across accounts and years. But in the end, the question resists closure. What exactly did those men see in the forests of Missouri? And why did their bullets do nothing? Perhaps it was no more than the human mind, frayed by exhaustion, conjuring shapes in the smoke. Perhaps it was an ordinary bear, its movements exaggerated by terror. Or perhaps war itself in all its cruelty had called forth something from the shadows, something ancient, something immune to steel and lead. The ghost bear of Missouri remains not in flesh, but in words. It lives in every torn diary, every hushed story, every cautious line buried in the newspapers of the day. Its fate is, as it was written then, unknown, and so the legend lingers pale and immense, vanishing always into the trees. It asks us to consider what walks beside men when they march to kill, what shadows gather when violence rends the earth. Do such things exist only in the imagination, or do they step into the world, summoned by blood and fear? The answer is lost to history, but the echo remains. The ghost bear is still out there in the stories we tell, in the silence of the woods, in the uneasy truth that not all mysteries of war can be buried. You have just heard another file from Warfront Archives. If you want to explore more shadows left behind by history, remember to subscribe and tread carefully, for not everything that walks in the forest leaves a track behind.